Hi, it's Maya here with the mid-year book freakouts tag, and I will link the original creators in the description. This is also my celebratory post because on the 14th of July, I had been on BookTube for 7 years. So this is the 7-year celebration, and I have done the media book freakout tag a couple of times during my channelversary, so I'm gonna do that again. And let's get started. So the first question is the best book that you have read so far, and that is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. It is the sequel to Gideon the Ninth, which I really enjoyed. So this is like a goth science fantasy with necromancers, and this one is set mostly on one space station with the god emperor of the necromancers, and the main character in this one is Harrow. In the first novel, the main character was Gideon. In this one, it's Harrow. And also, I'd like to mention from the comics and manga that I've read that my favorite out of those has been Our Dreams at Dusk, the series by Yuki Kamatani. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2021, and it's Harrow the Ninth. I tried to come up with something else, but I don't think I've read that many sequels, at least in books this year, so it's Harrow again. But out of comics, I could mention Monstress. I really enjoyed Monstress Volume 5 by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. So that one has been my favorite, like, continuation of a series in comics. It's a dark fantasy series with sort of a steampunk aesthetic and this monster living inside of this girl, and I really enjoy when the monster or the monster god sort of being is on the screen or on the pictures. It has been sort of absent for the fourth volume, so I'm very glad to see more of it again. The next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, and I just received, they came out right at the end of June, so I just received this. I have The Witness for the Death by Catherine Addison. This is the companion or set in the same world as the Goblin Emperor, which was this fantasy with goblins and elves, so a goblin becoming the emperor of elves, half goblin. And this one has as the main character a side character, a minor character from the first book, who is the witness for the dead. I don't know anything about the plot of this, and I don't want to know. It's very tiny, and I'm looking forward to reading it quite soon. And the other one of my most anticipated releases of this year was the continuation for the Courtney Crumrin series. This one is the Crumrin Chronicles. So this one tells the story more of Courtney's little brother, I think I should say, and Courtney is a bit older in this one. So this by Ted Navy, and this is Volume 1, The Charmed and the Cursed. And the first series, which is here, the Courtney Crumrin series, is this modern or contemporary fantasy with the Fae, and it's sort of a dark in tone. It's like a middle grade, early young adult. I was so happy when I found out that the series was getting continued or getting a companion series. From earlier in the year, I'd also like to mention The Theft of Sunlight by Intisar Kanani, who wrote Thorn, which was one of my favorites from last year. It was a fairy tale retelling of the Goose Girl fairy tale, and this one is like the start of this sequel or companion duology to that book, so it's set in the same world. And I don't know if it's actually a retelling of a fairy tale or not, but it's set in that world, and I don't have it yet, but I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. Then we move on to my most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and for that I am actually anticipating a manga the most, and it is the final volume of Shularun, The Girl from the Other Side by Nagabe. So this is the penultimate volume 10, which I haven't read yet, and volume 11 comes out, I think, in October. Yeah, so this is this dark fairy tale manga about this monster or creature and this little girl that they're sort of this found family together. I haven't read this one yet because I don't know if I want to read this one before the final one comes out or if I want to read them both at the same time. The next question is biggest disappointment, and for me that is Howard's End by Ian Forster, which is a classic from 1910 or thereabouts. And it is a story of sort of these three families, mainly the Schlegels, who are gentle and idealistic. There's also the rich Wilcoxes and the lower middle class Busts. And this was such a disappointment because I really have enjoyed other stuff that I read from Forster before, and this is said to be his masterpiece. So I have read A Room with a View, and then I also read Maurice from Forster, which I also really enjoyed. So I was expecting to really like this, and I could not get into this at all. I was really bored for most of the time, and I did something that I had never done before, which is I went to Wikipedia and looked at how it ended to see if I wanted to read the last like 50 pages. I was almost at the end, but I wasn't feeling it. Then it seemed like stuff was happening that I wanted to read about, so I finished the book. Otherwise, I would have probably DNF'd it. So this is definitely a disappointment. And now we're moving on to the biggest surprise. And these are books that I have enjoyed books from these authors before, but I was still surprised by how much I enjoyed them. So first, I'm going to say Dawn by Octavia E. Butler. This is a science fiction book where this woman wakes up on a spaceship when Earth has been destroyed, and her dealings with the aliens who are very alien and want to sort of save the human race but don't really understand how humans work. I have read and liked the Pattern Master series from Butler before, but this was like on a whole other level. I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite reads of this year. Other one that I was really surprised by was The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which recently got a reprint with a different cover and I think some changes. But I read the 2017 edition, and this one was a surprise because yes, it's a fantasy of manners romance. I was expecting to like it, but I think this is now my favorite Moreno Garcia. I really liked Certain Dark Things, which is a vampire story, and I thought vampires would be the number one spot for me with Moreno Garcia, but I liked this one the best, I think, of the books I read from her. So this one has this very convoluted love story, and it has a lot of melodrama, and I really was into the drama in this one. Then the next question is a favorite new author, debut or new to you. And with this one, I looked through all the books I've read from authors I haven't read from before, and I'm cheating a bit because the one that came to mind was Tansy Rayner Roberts. Even though I read the first novellas from her in December, I've now read more of her works, and actually I joined her Patreon. So definitely Tansy Rayner Roberts. I read in December the 2 Fantasy of Manners romance novellas of the Teacup Magic series, and I read a couple of her Patreon releases this year. And I'm looking forward to reading one of her older works, which is Musketeer Space, a retelling of the Three Musketeers. And I have owned that for a long while, but I think my Kindle copy is a bit damaged or something. So I got another copy from her Patreon. So I want to read that one very soon. Then the question is newest fictional crush, and I don't have an answer for that. I often do, and I often have comic characters in this, or then like some sort of Gods of Darkness or something. But for this year, I haven't come across with anything like that, so I couldn't come up with anything. And the next question is your newest favorite character, and I really enjoyed reading about Lilith in Dawn by Octavia Butler. Lilith was an interesting character in a very difficult situation, and I also really liked, I think he was called Alexander, from The Last Dignity of Man, which was this short story in Tanglewood Palace by Marjorie Liu, and I really enjoyed reading about his point of view. I will link my review of the whole short story anthology, so if you want to hear more about that story, it's in that review. The next question is a book that made you cry, and I often tear up when I'm reading, but once again for this year I couldn't really find a book that I remember crying or tearing up with. But when I talk about sort of a book that I had an strong emotional reaction to, it was Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. Some aspects of that were like very emotional for me, mainly the things that had to do with art and how colonizing forces deal with the art of the country that they colonize. The next one is a book that made you happy, and once again, I have a bit of a different answer to this. This is a book that made me laugh out loud multiple times. So that was Harrow the Ninth again. I really enjoyed some of the stupid jokes in this, and I laugh out loud when I'm reading this. I'm also currently reading the Murderbot novel Network Effect by Martha Wells, and I also often laugh out loud when I'm reading that. And next is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year, and that is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This cover illustration is just gorgeous. It is by Necro. I will link them in the description. And we're getting near the end. The next question is a book that you need to read by the end of the year. And I really want to read Death's Master by Tanith Lee, which I picked up this year. It's the second book in the Tales from the Flat Earth. I really loved Knight's Master. So this is a dark fantasy series with sort of this feel of mythology or fairy tales from this place called the Flat Earth. And then I also want to catch up with the Masquerade series by Seth Dickinson. So I have the first 3 books that are out. I have read the first one before, so I want to catch up with this. And the final question is your favorite book community member. And I'm going to mention a few people and their videos that I really enjoyed this year. So all the videos that I mentioned are going to be linked down below. So I really enjoy Riley Marie's TBR videos, where she picks up prompts from her TBR chart and chooses the books that she's going to read that month. And I also really like her reading vlogs. The one that comes to mind is My Favorite Author Chooses What I Read. Speaking of reading vlogs, Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe also once again did the 30 books in 30 days challenge and vlogged it. So I'll link that one. I also, as always, enjoy Emma from Drinking by My Shelf, and I love Emma's Balancing the Books videos. But the one that I'm gonna link is her Try a Chapter But I'm on the Floor video. So she tried the first chapter of I think every book that she had on her TBR, and she did that while lying on the floor. Also, there's a video that I really want to mention that I loved, even though I think I watched it actually last year. But that one I haven't mentioned anywhere, I think, and it was so much fun, so I wanted to mention it here. And that is Tiana T's I locked myself in a hotel room until I reached my Goodreads challenge. It's what it says. It was so much fun. So that was the media book freakout tag. In a couple of years, there have been a couple of different changing questions to this. So I found 2 questions that were part of the 2015 edition. One of them was favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year. And I watched the TV adaptation or the series adaptation of Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I haven't read the book, but I really enjoyed watching the series. Another one is a favorite video you have done so far this year. Since I haven't really done a lot of vlogs, I really liked the I read a manga a day in February video that I did in February. I was so proud that I actually managed to vlog that challenge of reading a manga a day, so maybe that one. So that was the mid-year book freakout tag and my 7 years on BookTube extravaganza that I did nothing party related to, but just letting you know, I've been doing this for 7 years, so here's to another year, I guess. Let me know if you have read any of these books and enjoyed any of these books that I mentioned, and that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.